In Foundations, you wrote a definition of done. A definition of done is just the list of what has to be true before you call a piece of work finished. And on your first build, it was a single bullet list. Code works, tests pass, looks right in the browser. That list was the right call for one feature. It is the wrong tool for your 10th. Because that one generic list checks a payment integration the exact same way it checks a button. And those two things break in completely different places. So the list passes, you ship, and the bug was sitting in the part the list never thought to look. Here's what I'm going to give you in the next few minutes. First, why one generic checklist quietly underchecks every kind of work you do, and the upgrade that fixes it. Then, the part most people skip. What actually makes a definition of done catch the bug instead of waving it through. The difference between a criterion you can argue about and one you can't. And then the move that makes it stick. The one rule you hand the AI so the right checklist shows up at the start of every feature instead of you trying to remember which one to use. By the end, you'll be able to write one real, reusable definition of done today for the kind of work you build most and wire it straight into how you work. Let's start with why the single list breaks, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The reason a generic checklist fails isn't that it's short, it's that it's generic. The verification a screen needs and the verification a database change needs have almost nothing in common. A new screen can pass looks right in the browser and still fall apart the second a real user hits it with no data, or a slow connection, or a phone instead of a laptop. A database change can pass every visible check and still quietly lose a row or break a query 3 features away that nobody thought to open. One list can't hold both sets of worries, so it holds the shallow ones, the ones every kind of work shares, and it silently drops the deep ones that are specific to the thing you actually just built. Generic checklists miss the task-specific risks. That's not a flaw you can fix by adding bullets. It's the wrong shape. So here's the upgrade. At operator depth, a definition of done isn't one list you reuse for everything. It's a small set of templates, one per kind of work, and each one already knows where that kind of work tends to break. You build a feature, you reach for the template that matches it, and the deep, specific checks are already sitting there waiting. You're not trying to remember. At the end of a long build, every way a database change can bite you. You wrote that down once, when you were calm and thinking clearly, and now it shows up every single time. Most builds come down to a handful of recurring kinds of work, and a template for each one carries you a long way. A screen, anything a user looks at and clicks. A data change, anything that touches how your information is stored or shaped. A connection to an outside service, billing, email, whatever lives on the other end of someone else's system. And the plumbing, the setup that keeps the whole thing running. 4 kinds of work, 4 templates. A screen's checks are about empty states, error states, the slow connection state, the phone screen, the second thing a user is likely to click. Not just the happy path you tested once and called good. A data change has the opposite worries entirely. Did anything get lost? Does the old data still work? Did some far-off query that depended on the old shape just quietly break? Different work, different failure points. And the template is where you keep that knowledge so you don't have to hold it in your head. Or, now the part most people skip, and it's the part that actually matters, a template full of vague checks is just a longer way to wave the bug through. The skill underneath all of this, the thing that separates a definition of done that catches problems from one that just looks thorough, is writing each criterion so it's observable. Observable means you can stand in front of it, do one specific thing, and get a clear yes or no. Not a judgment call, a fact. Watch the difference, because it's the whole game. Handles errors well is not a criterion, it's a hope. 2 people read it and picture 2 different things, and the AI reads it and pictures a third. When the network drops mid-submit, the user sees a clear message and no data is lost. That's a criterion. There's exactly one way to check it. You cut the network mid-submit and you look. It passes or it doesn't, and nobody can argue. Looks good on mobile is a hope. Renders correctly on a phone width screen with no horizontal scrolling and no overlapping text is a criterion. You shrink the screen and you see. Every line in a good definition of done is written, so a complete stranger could check it and get the same answer you would. If you can't describe how you'd verify a line, that line isn't done being written. It's a feeling wearing a checkbox. So, a real definition of done. The one your build kit ships with is built from 3 kinds of these observable lines. The required outcomes, the specific things this feature has to actually do, named concretely. Not pulls the data, but pulls payments for the date range the user picked and shows them in a table. The required behaviors, how it acts when things go right, and, more importantly, when they go wrong. What it does with good input, with bad input, with missing input, and exactly what it produces at the end. And the quality bar, the non-negotiables that hold for any serious work. No silent failures. Errors are visible. Rerunning it doesn't wreck data that's already there, and at least one edge case actually tested. Keep the whole thing tight, 3 to 7 lines per template, every one of them observable. If your definition of done has 20 checks, you're not being thorough. You're building too big. Break the work into smaller slices and write a tighter definition for each one. And here's the part that decides whether any of this survives contact with a real week. You write a definition of done before you build, not after. That's the whole point of it. After you've built something, you're not defining done. You're rationalizing whatever you happen to make. Set the bar first, while you can still think straight about what good actually means, and then build toward it. The definition is the target you're aiming at, not the report card you fill in at the end. Now, if reaching for the right template lived only in your memory, it would fail the same way everything you have to remember fails. You'd grab the generic checks out of habit, especially on the day you're tired and just want to ship. So you don't leave it to memory. This is the move that makes the whole practice durable, and it's the same shape you've seen across this method. You write the rule down once and you hand it to the AI. In the standing instructions, your AI follows on every session. You add one that says, in plain words, when we start a new feature, figure out what kind of work it is. A screen, a data change, an outside connection, the plumbing. Pull up the matching definition of done and walk me through it before either of us calls this finished. Sit with what that does. Now the right checklist shows up on its own at the start every time. As you build, the AI ticks off the outcomes as they come true. As you near shipping, it surfaces the behaviors and edge cases you said mattered, the network drop, the empty state, the bad input, and asks you to actually go try them. And done stops being a word you say when you're tired of working and starts being a bar the work has to clear. The definition of done becomes part of how you build, not a document you're supposed to remember to open. And I want to be straight about why this works, because it's not magic, and I won't pretend it is. The AI isn't secretly knowing where your specific bugs hide. The reason the right checks show up is that you did the thinking once. You decided what done means for each kind of work. You wrote it down where the AI can read it, and you stay in the loop to actually run the checks it surfaces. You wrote the rule, the AI follows it, you make the call. That's the entire mechanism. Take the rule away and you're back to one generic list waving bugs through. Put it in and the work gets checked the way it should be. As a byproduct of building, not as one more thing you have to white knuckle your way into remembering. Here's the move to make the minute this ends, and I'd do it before the next lesson. Don't try to write all 4 templates today. You don't need them all at once. Pick the kind of work you build the most. For most people, that's screens. Open your verification folder and write that one definition of done. 3 to 7 lines, every one of them observable, something a stranger could check and get the same answer you would. Then take that one rule and drop it into your rules folder. So the next feature you start, the AI reaches for the right checklist on its own. One real template, wired in. That's worth more than 4 vague ones you never use. So that's the definition of done at operator depth. Reusable templates, observable criteria, set before you build, surfaced automatically while you work. It catches what you knew to check. But here's the uncomfortable part. The worst bugs are the ones you didn't know to check for, the ones that aren't on any list, because it never occurred to you they could happen. Your definition of done passes clean. Every obvious check is green. And there's still something wrong, waiting. Finding that is a different skill. It's not following a checklist, it's hunting. That's where we go next. Find at least one thing wrong, then fix it at real operator depth. I'll see you there.